Alright guys, in today's video we're going to be talking about Resident Evil 3 Remake. More specifically, we're going to be focusing on the different console versions, the PlayStation 4 Pro version, as well as the Xbox One X version, because it was recently discovered by Digital Foundry that there is a big difference between the two, and Digital Foundry is actually recommending that if you plan to buy this game and play it, you do so on the PlayStation 4 Pro if you have the choice and if you're somebody who likes to game on console. And I think this is worth highlighting because we have a situation here where we're looking at a brand new AAA game from Capcom where you have two different consoles it's releasing on. One is significantly more powerful than the other. Supposedly it is the superior console, and it's a multi-platform game, and this is where I really need to emphasize that it's not always about the power. Sometimes the raw numbers on the spec sheets will not always translate to a better experience. Now, there's no doubt that this comes down to the developers, not necessarily Xbox, and not even the console itself. But again, it is worth highlighting, not only to just let people know about it so they're aware of it, but to kind of back up the points that I frequently try to make here on the channel when it comes to the differences between these consoles and why sometimes it just really doesn't matter that much. So before we go any further, if you could do me a favor, make sure you hit the like button if you want to help the video out, and hit the subscribe button as well. But as I said, Digital Foundry kind of showed this in their most recent video, and I'm actually going to play the clip for you here to listen in for yourself, where they're going to highlight the difference between the PS4 Pro version and the Xbox One X version. And unfortunately for Xbox owners, it seems that if this was a game you were planning on buying, whether it's on the base model Xbox One or the One X, you're going to be pretty disappointed in how it performs, because it seems like it really has some issues with frame rate. So here you go, listen in to what Digital Foundry has to say here.
Where I think we should talk about the performance issues. So, true to the demo, the PS4 Pro version is indeed on top. So the game targets 60 frames per second across all platforms. If you're playing on the Pro, you get that pretty much most of the time. It is not perfect. There's definitely moments where it dips below, but I feel like it's very comparable to what we saw with Resident Evil 2, where the overall level of performance is high enough, it's consistent enough that you can call this a full 60 frames per second game. And in that sense, I do think that of all the console versions, this is the one that does play the best. The real takeaway here is that fundamentally the performance is basically the same as what we saw in the demo. If there is any difference, it's very, very subtle. But that's perfectly fine in the case of PS4 Pro, because aside from those moments like we just saw where there are some dips, again, it's mostly very, very stable. So it plays great on PS4 Pro. And so I guess the disappointing thing is like the demo, the Xbox One X version, by targeting native 4K resolution, even with checkerboarding of some sort, it does not maintain 60 FPS. So in that sense, it is noticeably less stable than Resident Evil 2 last year, which did run at a lower resolution similar to PS4 Pro on the X. So by targeting this high resolution, that pretty much means that the game is always under 60 FPS during just about every gameplay sequence. It pretty much runs at about 50 frames per second on average, I'd say. Sometimes you'll get dips as low as nearly 30, like in this scene here where I explode a barrel right next to Nemesis there. You can see it drops to 32 FPS momentarily. A big drop there on the frame rate graph. So, and this is kind of consistent throughout my entire playthrough on Xbox One X, and it's especially bad in the cutscenes. So, the thing is though, is I feel like there's two ways to approach this to fix this in a potential patch. One, offer players the option to cap the frame rate at 30 FPS. It would at least be a stable 30, which I think would feel better overall. Or offer something to reduce the resolution back to, say, Resident Evil 2 levels, so you could at least conceivably hit that level of performance. So I actually asked Capcom about this, and was basically told that Capcom is definitely aware of the fan feedback with regards to Xbox performance, so they may look into providing a solution sometime after launch. So yeah, that's kind of the situation there in terms of frame rate. It's pretty much just like the demo. which means if you have a choice of console, I would definitely recommend PS4 Pro above all.
And as you can see here, the Xbox One X version of Resident Evil 3 Remake is not doing too well because Capcom, for whatever reason, decided it was more important to go for that higher resolution on the Xbox One X version, and it has clearly, the price has clearly been paid in terms of performance here. Now, I would argue that most people would probably prefer to see that resolution lowered if possible, so that way they can get that stable, higher performance. Or at the very least, I think it would have been better if Capcom had decided to maybe put out an option where you can lock the frame rate at 30 FPS so you can maintain that higher 4K resolution, or you can choose to have a performance mode similar to what we see with the PS4 Pro, where you put performance above overall pixel count. I think the PS4 Pro version runs at 1620p, which is obviously not 4K, but it looks pretty good in my opinion. And this is a case where, honestly, Xbox One X owners who are looking forward to this game, they're going to be most likely pretty disappointed until the game ends up getting patched. It is good that Capcom is acknowledging it and they are going to do something about it, but again, I feel this is worth highlighting because I'll put it to you this way, man. If the Xbox One X was the only console I owned right now, knowing that I paid more money for it, knowing that I, at the very least, expect all of my multi-platform games to run better, that is probably one of the biggest selling points of the Xbox One X and will be a big selling point potentially for the next generation Xbox, I would be pretty upset right now. I would be pretty annoyed because to me, having a higher frame rate is definitely more important than having just those extra pixels. I mean, I'm all about high resolutions as well and my games looking the best that they absolutely can, but it should never come at the cost of performance. But at the very least, there should be that option to be able to lock it down at 30 FPS if I really cared that much about the resolution. So I'm not blaming Xbox. I'm not placing the blame on the Xbox One X because it's not the fault of either. It really is seemingly Capcom's fault for some reason deciding to go with higher resolution at the cost of overall performance. But it is worth noting that this is why you can't always just sit there and bank on the idea that if you're willing to pay more money for the on paper better machine, at the end of the day, that doesn't always mean in every single instance you're going to have the better performing games. And this very well could be a little bit of a glimpse into what we see in the future, where maybe on the Xbox Series console we see most games probably putting I guess we could say resolution and other factors that play into how good a game looks above performance, potentially. I'm not saying that will be the case. It might not be, but we could see a situation where the PlayStation 5 maybe has less focus on all the extra bells and whistles visually and has that focus on performance. But again, it comes down to developers and what they choose to do, and for whatever reason Capcom decided that with the PS4 Pro, maintaining that 60 FPS was more important than trying to bump the resolution up as high as they could, and it seems that it worked out for the best in the end for PlayStation 4 Pro owners. And for some reason they decided with the Xbox One X version, and you know what, it could very well be that Capcom decided to do this because all they hear Xbox fans constantly bragging about is that power factor, that GPU, that 6 T-flop number, and now that 12 T-flop number, where we know that that is directly correlated with, how high the resolutions can go. And maybe they just decided that Xbox One X owners will be more happy with that than having a higher frame rate. We might not know in the end, and I don't think it really matters at this point because this is just the way it is, but I had to take some time here to highlight this because people should be aware of it, but it does back up what I've been trying to say here on the channel, where at the end of the day, it's not always about the numbers on the spec sheets, because the fact of the matter is we have a scenario with a big AAA title here, a brand new one, that's running better and performing better on the less expensive, less powerful console. And it just leaves people who invested in the Xbox One X probably feeling pretty frustrated right now which is understandable because I would also be very frustrated. But that's going to do it for the video, guys. Let me know your thoughts about this down in the comments below. Are you planning on buying Resident Evil 3 Remake? And if so, where do you plan to play it? On PlayStation, Xbox, or PC? Be sure to leave the video a like if you enjoyed it or found it informative. Subscribe to the channel if you're new and haven't already. Hit the bell notification icon so you never miss an upload, and feel free to share this video out on top of all that. But until next time, guys, take care.